It is Lovecraft Month, and that means that we ended up watching one of the newest Lovecraft adaptation movies that came out, Color Out of Space.
Starring my main man, Nicolas Cage.
So I knew nothing about this movie going in. I just knew it was like a Lovecraft adaptation, and I was like, cool, what's gonna happen now?
I saw it at TIFF in September and absolutely loved it because it was everything I wanted it to be. I had 2 good Nick Cage freakouts. It was pretty to look at. It was like an interesting adaptation. It did some cool stuff.
So the premise of this movie is that a meteor falls out of the sky. It hits this farm where there's a family living. There's a mother who's just kind of gotten over cancer. There is Nick Cage, who's the father. Then they have 3 kids, a young boy. There is the daughter who's in the middle, and she just kind of wants to get out. Like, she's just like, we're stuck on a farm in the middle of nowhere, great. And then there's the older son who's just kind of...
He's kind of given up, like he's accepted that this is probably where he's going to be for the rest of his life. And when his dad passes away, it's going to be him by himself taking care of these alpacas.
Yeah. And then they also have a squatter on the land named Ezra, who I'm pretty damn sure is Leo from that 70s show, and it's like basically the same character, just a little less dumb. It is so funny.
Oh, we forgot to mention Ward, who is an alumni from Miskatonic University, and he is doing a survey of the water table because they're going to be putting up a big dam to create a reservoir.
Basically what happens is once this asteroid hits, things start going wrong. Like, the water is bad. And so, of course, the surveyor takes a sample of the water. He's like, no, don't drink the water. There's something wrong with it.
Why, what's wrong? Everybody continues to guzzle the water.
And, like, bathe in it, do the dishes. First it starts very small, where people are just kind of, like, distracted and, like, losing time. The mother accidentally cuts off 2 of her fingers. The technology isn't working anymore. Like, the phone is just static. The TV is showing random images. The truck is not starting anymore.
The kid is talking to the guy who lives in the well.
Yeah.
Which you don't realize is foreshadow. And the landscape slowly starts to change. Like, it becomes more vibrant and more alive. And, like, Nick Cage's tomatoes like grow overnight like a month early. It's visually stunning.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It looks like some kind of crazy fairy tale forest. It's just like there's color everywhere. Like, the mist is like this like beautiful magenta pink, and just things look off and weird. So it's kind of hard to be terrified in this movie because, like, that's so pretty. It's very hard in some ways, but like it does a good job with like the creeping dread that comes from a Lovecraft horror.
And then the big changes start to happen. Nick Cage's prized possession in this movie are his alpacas. They are the animal of the future, and he's at the beginning of the movie being like, yeah, like, wait until you try alpaca meat. And his family's like, you don't eat them. You get the wool.
You make sweaters.
You make sweaters. And he's like, oh, just wait up. He loves these alpacas. So as stuff starts going wrong, what is he concerned about the most? What about the alpacas? 5 alpacas become 1 alpaca monster.
Who he then proceeds to kill with a shotgun.
As he screams. It's wonderful.
It's wild. So, like, the main kick-off to, like, the horror is that there's something, like, in the barn at one point, like, you're not sure what it is, but it obviously got to the alpacas. One of the kids goes into the barn, he realizes something's wrong, he runs out, and the mother's, like, comforting the youngest, and then the energy, like, explodes and turns them into one being.
Fuses them into things. And, like, one thing I definitely love about this movie is all of the practical effects. So the mother-kid monster thing is, like, there. It's real. It's this big elaborate, like, puppet that's got the actress, like, embedded in it. And it is just, like, so gross.
Yeah, it really is. They did a fantastic job.
And they're just, like, making weird noises, and the 2 other kids are like, what the fuck did we do?
Yeah, like... And then Nicolas Cage is slowly, like, descending into madness, and he's kind of, like, goes from delusion to, like, reality and back again.
He was, like, the one who's probably been the most exposed. Because, like, at this point, everyone has drunk some of the water, so everyone has been infected. But Nicolas Cage had a bath.
He
in the shower and he just got coated and he's like all like scabbed up,
Yeah.
completely disassociated. It's like he's almost channeling his like abusive father that he had that they were hinting at. Like one moment he's like screaming at his kids and you're just like, what is this voice you're doing, sir?
It was like he was channeling Donald Trump. Like, it's a mild Donald Trump impression, but it was so funny.
There are hints of like vampires kiss Nick Cage in this movie, which is just like things come full circle.
Your favorite Nick Cage.
It's my favorite Nick Cage movie. It's Nick Cage's favorite Nick Cage movie. The two kids who are left, the two older siblings, are now trying to escape because they're like, okay, like we can't be here, like we need to get out. And the car is a bust, and so they try to get on the horse, and the horse gets away. So like, I guess we're gonna have to walk. The brother is like, oh no, I hear our dog that's been missing since about Act 1 of this movie, and it appears the dog is in the well. And the sister's like, okay.
I need you to not.
I need you to not. He's like, but we gotta, because it's family. And so he falls into the well and gets consumed by the monster in the well. And then Nick Cage grabs his daughter, is like, you need to feed your mother. And you're like, oh no.
That sounds too literal for me.
Throws her in the room with the monstrosity that was the mother, who's like turned into like
a spider.
A spider. Like, I would love to see the concept art.
If picture a smaller, like, human version of like Shelob.
So while this is going on, the water surveyor Ward has like hooked up with like a cop and they're coming to check on everything. And Nick Cage is just wild and they manage to get upstairs and like Nick Cage shoots the mom. It's like, she's not my family. And they're like, okay, well, what is going on? They're like, we have to get out. And the daughter, Lavinia's just like, no, like, we're trapped here. It's not going to let me leave. And he's like, but we got And they're like, oh, we got to go rescue Ezra. And so they go to like check on the squatter and he's like dead.
At one point too, Ward is trying to carry out Lavinia and so the sheriff is behind Nick Cage and Nick Cage is behind Ward and Nick Cage is going to shoot Ward and so the sheriff shoots Nick Cage so Nick Cage is dying and Lavinia is like, well, this is where I live now, like I'm not leaving. And then so they go to see Ezra
and Ezra's dead and there's a recording. It's like, yeah, it like got in the water, it got into everything, it grew strong and like,
and it basically is just trying to turn the world into something that's familiar to it.
Yeah, and so then they like, oh no, we gotta get out of here because the light starts coming out of Ezra. And the cop just gets dragged up into the trees by like some monstrous abomination of like animals that got, you know, squished together. And so Ward like heads back to the house and Nathan's watching TV, Nick Cage, and he's like, but you're dead though!
And Nick Cage kind of turns on him and he starts chasing him, so he manages to get down under the house into like the cellar as like the thing in the well is like ramping up to explode.
And just like, there was like a brief moment where he like meets Lavinia and they kind of like mind meld and they see like maybe it's the alien homeworld, maybe it's just trippy visions.
Yeah.
Who knows? But it was cool.
And then the thing explodes and like everything is leveled within a couple of miles.
And there's no color left.
It kind of ends and I think it's implied that the dam that they were building finally covered over where the house was. The guy's just like kind of traumatized and just like, I'm not drinking the water. I don't fucking care, no.
And he's like really like a shaken man by that. Like he's like aged 10 years. You know, a true cosmic horror protagonist. You make it out, but do you really?
Yeah. It was an absolutely interesting movie. You pointed out that like they decided to do the magenta color as the color in space.
Because
why?
What I was reading online, and like I'm like 95% sure this is true, but I'm not sure, is that magenta isn't, like, true magenta isn't a color that appears naturally. It's something that was man-made. So, like, the fact that they used, like, a man-made color for the color out of space because it's unnatural is kind of cool. Because, like, originally when people were talking about adapting this short story, it made sense to do it in black and white because that way you're forced not to see the colors, so it kind of leaves that it's more true to, like, the unknowability of the thing. But like I think by doing this in black and white, or if you were to watch this movie in black and white, you'd be doing yourself a disservice because like the color palette in this movie is wild.
Oh yeah. Like looking at anything in this movie, you're just like, no, it's absolutely gorgeous, even when it's supposed to be spooky. And then you were pointing out, you made another good point about body horror.
Yes, okay. So this is something that I've been thinking about a lot in the past year when Chelsea and I first began this adventure into cosmic horror. As the year goes by, cosmic horror becomes more and more comforting to me.
Yep.
In a way. They were talking about it in Deep Roots, and I guess we'll probably end up touching on that when we do the review for Deep Roots. But cosmic horror is about like an unknowable dread. It's about how like the universe is something that we will never understand, that we are actually super completely insignificant. Like we're not even dust to like these big, crazy, wild things. Movies seem to fall into this trap when they're adapting cosmic horror, and that's body horror. Because they can't commit to just like the dread. It's the whole abject horror thing. Like once you start doing shit to your body, it makes you on edge. So cosmic horror ends up relying on like body horror to get across that dread instead of just like keeping like...
Body horror becomes like a thing you can't understand because like why? So
like I'm thinking of like if you look at like The Thing or our good old favorite, Event Horizon. And even a little bit in The Mouth of Madness, when her head starts to turn and the crazy lady in the inn. I'd be interested to see if it's possible to do like an adaptation of a cosmic horror story without relying on body horror to like get across that like discomfort.
Yeah, I think you could maybe do it with sound.
Yeah.
I think sound would be a really good, like, because they kind of do it. Like, there's always, like, a bit of a ringing when things are going wrong, but I feel like you could really do it with sound.
Because I think about, like, The Babadook, that movie, and just how, like, that is one of the most uncomfortable movies I've ever watched in my life, because just the tension in it is just, like... So, like, it's doable, but...
It just has to be done real carefully.
You don't need tentacles for cosmic horror. That is it. That is my takeaway.
So, Color Out of Space is definitely one of the more interesting adaptations of Lovecraft that you're probably going to find out there. So we definitely recommend watching it. It's super cool, super fun. Got some great acting there from Nicolas Cage.
2 good Nicolas Cage freakouts, a weird voice.
Yeah, it's just so fun.
Yeah.
All right. See you guys.